Dry brushing, sponge painting, and money saving. Those are the three things that drove this Judiciar project. You see, the Judiciar was only released in the Indominus launch box. An amazing box, by the way. Then, GW took a fifth of that box and sold it off as a set, for like $32 less than the entire box. Classic GW. That limited availability is what's driven the secondary market prices. And that's not just what they're asking for, it's what they're getting. Even for such questionable specimens as this fellow. I already had the Skaven Tide box set. I had picked it up for a little bit of a conversion project with the Skaven half, and this guy seemed like the perfect base for a Judiciar kitbash. Let's head on over to the table to see how dry brushing, sponge painting, and kit bashing can give us an amazing result and save us a lot of money. Just to clarify, this doesn't mean go out and buy a Skaven Tide box set, because that would completely undermine the entire point of trying to save money. Just take this and use it as a launch point with whatever model you've got laying around, or whatever you can find a great deal on. The assembly of this model was largely unmodified. The differences and what will make it feel more 40k come in the shoulder pauldron, the head, a weapon swap, the backpack, and his defeated foe. For anyone wondering, I like to use a very thinned down sprue goo for my assembly. I find that it really helps fill the seams in nice, and if you want to make it, it's pretty easy. You just cut up a little bit of sprue and throw it into some plastic cement. Let it dissolve and you're good to go. This is the first big modification that I've made, and of course I forgot to hit record on it. All I had to do here was find a nice Space Marine power sword from my bits box, clip the grip, then cut the axe off just below the grip that's already connected to the hands, drill both parts, and pin them together. In order to add some more of those Space Marine 40k vibes, specifically Blood Angels, I'll be swapping out this AOS pauldron for a 40k one. And obviously it's got to be Blood Angels because they are the best chapter. For the power pack, I went ahead and grabbed one of my Death Company specific ones. Because it has the scroll work, the same as the back already does. It really helps join those two together and make it look pretty cohesive. When you're doing these conversions, it's the little things, and the more you can make it look like one piece rather than a bunch of disjointed parts, the better off you're going to be. After all, we really don't want it looking like it's just some orky kit bash where they just grab everything and slap it together. Nothing against you orc players out there. Some beautiful stuff, but just not on this piece. After looking at it for a while though, I wasn't a fan of how the power pack was sitting. It had a slight tilt to it and it just didn't feel right. So to go ahead and fix that, I wound up cutting away a chunk of the cloak. That allowed the power pack to sit flush against the back of the armor. Once all those parts had had time to dry, I went ahead and did my priming. For this, I'm just using a simple Krylon Color Max black primer. To lay the foundation of the blue armor, we'll be dry brushing on some dark gray blue. The goal with this is to cover approximately 80, maybe 90% of the exposed armor plate. You want to leave a little bit of that true black showing through to really get that dark contrast. Following that, we need to mix in some sky blue and then repeat the process covering maybe only 50 or 60%. You want to build up the layers, leaving those previous colors showing to get a nice gradient. I'm going to keep working that up through several different shades just by adding a little bit more of that sky blue in and repeating the process, covering a little bit less each time. Then, once I have it bright enough, I'm going to add a little bit of white in and focus that mostly on just the edges and the very top surfaces. Once I got all the armor done, I decided it was a little bit brighter than I wanted, so what I did is I just came in with a watered down mid-tone and tried to smooth out that transition and darken everything down just a little bit. To get the best results from this process, you really want to play with it, go back and forth a little bit, and find that perfect spot for it. Just be patient and don't rush it. Once you're happy with the color gradients on the armor, you can come back in for that final edge highlight to really get some defined shapes. When you can, it's nice to be able to use the side of the brush for doing this. It gives you a lot more control, and you don't have to try and draw the line. Once you've done that, you can come back in with a real fine tipped brush and just add a little bit of black for some black lining in the recesses between the panels. This will give you that maximum contrast and create a really nice false shadow. Here's where it's at so far. The Lamardes I used an airbrush on, and it got a really nice, beautiful, smooth blend. But since most people don't have airbrushes, I figured this would be a good way to practice, get that nice blue gradient, and still give you access to the same kind of look and feel. For my metallics, what I like to do is start off with a nice white gold. Having a warm tone to play off the cold blues will make the model that much more visually appealing, giving it another layer of contrast that you really need. And this guy's hourglass might not be quite as large as the Judiciar model, but I'll tell you what, he still gets fight first. Time for one of my new favorite things, sponge painting. This is my first attempt at this scale, and I couldn't be happier with how it came out. You are going to want to use a fairly thinned down paint for this. For this cloak, I started out with burnt red. The idea behind this is that paint is going to hit the tops, the exposed surfaces, leaving your recesses the previous color, and also adding a beautiful pattern to it, making it feel like something that's alive, something organic, not a flat metallic surface. As you go through this process, you're going to want to lay down about 2 to 3 layers per color, and then you're going to want to move up the scale gradually, making small incremental changes so you don't get any big spots that look out of place or big jumps in your gradient that just kind of throw it off. For my cloak, I went from that burnt red to a mix of burnt red, bold pyrrole red, then to bold pyrrole, then to bold pyrrole and a mix of orange, then to just a little bit of orange. It does take a while, especially with letting the coats completely dry so that you don't mess them up coming back in over top. And honestly, the skill level needed is really not high. Once I was happy with how my gradients looked, I came back in with a little bit of pure yellow. I laid this down over all the edges, and it looks gaudy. It's super bright, super annoying, but it's not going to stay like that. Once all those yellow highlights are down, what you can do is then come in with a thinned down, maybe 50-50 water and orange mix, and put that over the top. It's going to give you a very vibrant, very bright orange. You're not going to see that yellow unless you want to leave a little bit. It's just going to really emphasize those edges and make them super bright and poppy. Moving on from the outside, I went ahead and took care of the inside of the cloak. I decided to just leave this one black, honestly because the inside behind the model was already sprayed black, and I didn't want to try and get my brush in there and fiddle with that, so the easiest route is just to leave it that nice black, add in a little bit of blue highlight shade, a little bit of gray in there, and call it a day. In my opinion, the best place to start with these scrolls is to go with either a khaki or a tan. You want to be patient with this step and try and make sure you don't get it on that beautiful blue armor or your nice red cloak. You've already put a lot of time and effort into those, and it would be a real shame to have to go back and fix them now. And as long as you got that later color out, what you can do is come back in and add a little bit of damage to your cloak. You could do some spots, some scratches, whatever you feel like, or you could honestly just leave it alone. What I'm doing with these scratches is laying down that nice neutral, coming in, hitting the lower surface with the white and the upper surface with the black. That's going to create that forced shadow look, making it look like a deep gouge. It can feel wrong to add that white to the bottom since you're so used to highlighting the upper surface, but think of this as the upper surface of the open scratch, not the bottom of the scratch. For all the robes, all the cloth on this guy, I really wanted to keep the color similar to the armor, but I wanted to make it distinct. And for that, the easiest thing to do was to use this nice clipped flat brush. I went ahead and cut this thing up when I was working on some Tyranids a while back, and it's really nice for getting a whole bunch of really nice lines in really quick. You can see here, you can really get that cloth textured look without a whole lot of effort. And here's some of that shading step that I talked about with the scrolls. Just coming in, making sure that the recesses get a nice darker, warmer feel. Then coming back in and getting the highlights with a nice ivory. Definitely not a full white, it's going to look really off if you use white. For this fur texture on the cloak, I'm going to go back to a dry brush. There's no reason to use a whole lot of effort when something this simple can give you such good results. All I'm doing for this is mixing up a little bit of light gray, a little bit of my black, a little bit of white, and we're good to go. From there, I'm coming back in with pure silver, highlighting all my metallics, and then coming back in and picking out all the little studs all over the armor. Definitely a time-consuming process. If you didn't want to, you don't have to do that, but it will give you a better look in the end, just showing that extra little detail you put in. Since he has all these scrolls, it really felt like it would be a shame not to do something with them. I figured I'd come in, do a little bit of the scribble scratch, just some quick lines, little dots, dashes. As you're doing this, it's best not to go completely pure black. Mix in a little bit of whatever color the scroll is, and that'll keep your lettering from just being super stark and looking way out of place. For both the Necron and the sword, I decided to use some green, white, and some warpstone. The best way I've seen to achieve this look is just to put down a thinned coat of your dark green color around the entire surface, and then build up the brightness and the intensity as you move in. So in this case, moving up to green, adding a little bit of white, and then some dots of white in the center. Doing it that way really helps to sell that idea that that light's just radiating out. For the sword, if I was going to do it again, I would put down my dark green first, then come back in with a brighter green, then come in with the white, warpstone over top, and then come back in and pick out little points of white, just to make that really bright pop, especially where the lines intersect and meet. Here's the step where I was doing those color blocks. The idea here is to break up that surface and give the viewer something to look at that's not just tan, khaki, little scribbles. By doing this, you can add a little bit of interest, a little bit of detail, and just change things up ever so subtly. Here's another thing I could have done better. Paint your base first, then paint the stuff on the base. I don't know why I missed that, or why I didn't think about it this time, but learn from my mistake. Make it simple on yourself. Don't make it hard. It really did feel like this model was 90% sponges and dry brushing. And honestly, for being what it is, it came out looking great. I'll be using a little bit of PVA glue to put some flock on there to get that green. Gives it a nice contrast in color on the base. After that, the only thing left is that base rim, and then we are done. And here he is again next to the Lamartes. Very similar color schemes, very different approach. One, Lamartes, airbrush, edge highlights, real technical work. The Judiciar, bunch of sponge painting and dry brushing. Not only did I wind up saving a bunch of money by not buying one of those sets for a Judiciar, I also got to play around with and push some of these simpler techniques, and I really love the outcome. Never feel like you have to pay for the exact model. This guy is a Judiciar. He could also be a captain. He could be whatever you want him to be. As long as he's WYSIWYG and people know what he's doing, you're good to go. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Go grab your dry brushes, your sponges, and go have some fun, guys.